I'm here with Andy of Rivers of Nile to talk about the upcoming new record, Rivers of Nile. You guys went with a self-titled, not
Yeah, man.
not too shabby for a self-title, I must say. It comes out May 30th on Metal Blade Records. Andy, it's always a pleasure to see you. I can still see that we go to the same barber, so
Oh yeah.
that hasn't
I was
changed.
gonna ask you, with the last interview that we did, that was years ago. Was I bald then?
I think you were.
Or I might have had like a little bit of hair, but
No,
I
I
was
think you had
headed.
a little bit. You had a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you had a
Now
little bit.
it's all gone.
Yeah, you look
I
fine.
mean, now we're in the hair club for men.
Yeah, exactly. Now I just need all for men for my beard to look a little bit darker and maybe let it grow as much as yours. Yours looks outstanding.
Thank you, man. You got to spray some Roundup on there. That's the trick.
That's the trick. All right,
Yeah.
as soon as I go home, I'm gonna dip my face in some of that as I have it for my garden. So
Don't do it.
I'm
Don't
gonna
do
dip
it.
my face on that. No, not a good idea. Maybe not a good idea. The problem is if I'm not careful and it goes on the rest of my body, then we have a serious problem.
Yeah, then you might look like me.
Oh, well, I'm not
Just
going to take my shirt off because I'm a bear pretty much.
I'm with you, dog.
You too?
Eh.
All right. Yeah, I'm waiting to meet the right person to start an OnlyFans, but I think we might have something cooking here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll run some fans over our body hair, and it'll.
I was thinking about two bald guys and one beard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The,
Oh,
the name
gross.
of the name of the OnlyFans. All right, let's move into better topics and let's talk about this record. Um, this is your first full-length record with the band,
Yeah.
working on the album. But before we even talk about your work on this record, how was your introduction to the band? How was the whole process from your standpoint?
Mm. I mean, it was fairly seamless for a couple of reasons. One, I had been a fan and friend of the band since they started. I actually played in a band right before Brody and Biggs joined the original lineup of Rivers of Nile with John Coons, Jake Diefenbach, and Ron Nelson. I was in a band with those guys immediately prior, and I remember I wrote something in a major key, and they kicked me out. Yeah, so like I was in a precursor briefly to Rivers of Nile. Then they got Brody and Biggs, and then they started, writing the music that would become their first EPs and albums, and I've been a fan ever since. And like I said, we've known each other since then. So uh, I was at the party that they threw to celebrate that they got signed to Metal Blade Records before the Conscious Seed of Light. I was at their first show or second show. I can't remember. One of the two, maybe both. Um, so yeah, we just kept in touch over the years. But for the past maybe, you know, 7 or 8 years, it was kind of understood that if they ever needed another guitar player, it would be me. Um, and when they put out the work, I was so blown away by it that I reiterated to them like, hey man, if you guys ever wanted me to be a part of it, I would love to. Because I heard the work and I thought like, man, I wish I had been a part of making that. It's just, I think it's, at this point, I think it's a criminally underrated album. But because everyone talks about how great Owls is, and it is, but the work is for me a very special one. So the point in time came that they needed a new guitar player, and it was me. And it was known that when I joined the band too that I wasn't going to be a fill-in, that I was kind of there to stay. So here we are.
And here we are. So let me ask you this. Considering that you've been there from the beginning, well, technically in the outskirts, you're like the sixth man, if you will, in basketball terms, or the
Yeah,
designated hitter, if you prefer baseball terms.
either works.
Either one works, I think. So since you've been there from that standpoint, when you guys come into this record and start working on this record, considering what the work was as an
Mhm.
album, did that add pressure on all of you, not just you, but on all of you to deliver maybe not something similar, but something within that same framework?
I don't think so. I think the pressure that is involved in making an album, and I can't really speak for the other guys, but I can speak for myself for sure. It's just the pressure comes from just wanting to make a good album. And anyone who's familiar with my career, which I know you are, um, I've I've always kind of just made the album that I was going to make at the time, and worked on making sure that it was the best sounding album that it could be, that the songs are the most concise that they can be, and I've failed at that miserably over the years. But I think the pressure comes from just wanting to deliver a good product. I think, with this album, it couldn't have been too similar to the work, because from what I understand, the work was really like for lack of a better term, it was a COVID album. Like Brody had tons of time inside, and he just layered and layered and layered. And I think a lot of those compositions on the work were started with like synths actually, and then the guitars were kind of almost secondary to the compositions. And with this album, we very much wanted to make it kind of guitar driven. And the songs came about in a way that were, here's the arrangement with the guitars and the drums and the bass and the core instruments, and then we can build around that. Whereas the work was the opposite way around. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question properly, but there wasn't much of a thought other than we're going to make a good album. We want the songs to be concise, and we're going to start with guitars.
And why did you guys decide to go with the self-titled? Is that a little bit of like a rebirth, if you will?
I think that the self-titled moniker was something that they had planned for a while. I think that with the end of the Four Seasons concept that they had with the first four albums, I think that it was kind of, they intended to try to do a self-titled, but it coincided with all the lineup shifts, one that we talked about the last time I saw you in Toronto. But like there were a lot of lineup shifts, and with those lineup shifts came a solidifying of the new lineup, and the fact that is musically and interpersonally the strongest lineup that the band's had in a long time. And that kind of reinforced the fact that it should be a self-titled album, and that the music warrants that as well. So yeah, I mean, it was a number of things. I think it was sort of like floating around that would be the idea, and then with everything that happened since I joined the band, it just was like, yeah, that makes sense.
I want to go back to your previous point about this being a more guitar focused, maybe even a more guitar driven record. When I've been listening to the album quite a bit, and one thing that I definitely noticed that aspect of the record, but having a little bit more of a guitar centric, guitar focused album has made this, in my opinion, a little bit more progressive than the previous records. It still has
Mm,
technical elements in there, but the guitars
yeah.
breathe a lot better. And when the guitar sound breathes a lot better, with a band like Rivers of Nile, you end up getting a little bit more progressive in the sound and the textures of the sound. Do you get that same kind of experience?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we've kind of aspired to do guitar wise comes from live experience. And what I mean by that is when you play live, and we've all been guilty of trying to play as fast as we can in the past, every one of us, um, to varying degrees of success. But like the thing that's going to sound best in a room, particularly a larger one, is slower riffs. So it's like, and I'm not comparing any of our riffs to the magnitude of a riff like this, but a prime example of that would be Sad But True. Sad But True is going to sound massive in a room. And if you're playing, you know, blast beats and 16th notes at 240 beats per minute, that's technically impressive. But it's going to get lost. It's going to sound very washy. And the point is very quickly going to get lost. So a lot of our compositions now, especially from a guitar perspective, are what's going to sound big in a room. And I remember I presented the riff to Suborbital Blues. That was the first riff that I presented to Brody, and the first song we started working on for this record. That was very much intended, like, this is going to sound big when we play it live. And a lot of the compositions are geared towards that now, as opposed to how fast can I play? Even though we can't play as fast as other bands out there anyway. So it's like that's not our strong suit. So what's our strong suit? Big riffs that sound big in a room, and that's how the album. That's how a lot of the music on the album, the genesis of it, that's a consideration.
Considering how that live aspect is important for you guys, how far are we from seeing you picking up a saxophone during a live performance?
Me,
Yeah. You're a talented dude, man. I feel like, you can probably pull it off, no?
I would have to. I mean, the best thing I could do with a saxophone would be to like stick it up my ass or something.
Well, that would make for an interesting
Yeah,
performance. Let me
yeah,
tell
for
you that.
sure. I mean, that's what I was gonna say. That's probably a later in the career type stuff.
I was gonna say at least at the encore. Like that should be on the
Yeah,
encore. Like
yeah,
because if you do
yeah,
that early on in the set, like what are you gonna do after for an encore?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Yeah. Get rid of all the women and children. Yeah, it's But no, that I can't play saxophone at all. Um, Patty holds it down. He did a great job on this album too. I'm
yeah.
really a big fan of the sax on the album. He It's the first Rivers album where I personally feel like the sax is interwoven in the compositions. It doesn't feel like something that's going on over top. Like if you took the sax away from this album, I would miss it personally. And I think the music, there would feel like there was a layer missing. Speaks to Patty as a musician and a person. And I've said this before in interviews. Patty very much plays the way he is as a guy. He's a very quiet, respectful, unassuming guy. He's very kind, and he plays sax like that. I think I hear it when I hear him play.
I agree with you 100%. I felt like it didn't feel to me like, oh, here they go again with a saxophone. You know what I
Right.
mean? It felt like it was an integral piece of the song that at times you almost don't even notice it because it just belongs
Mhm.
there. So you don't
Yep.
necessarily notice it. But when
Yep.
you notice it, it's like, wow, it's just another piece of the puzzle of it's just
Yeah.
another layer in the overall texture that the songs have. And I thought this album did it the best. Actually, believe it or not, I've said with the last, including this one, with the last three records of Rivers of Nile, every time I do a review, I say that this is their best album ever. I'm going to be saying the same thing about this one. This is after the work, it's a hard thing to say, but
Yeah.
I
I
feel
love
like
the
this.
work, man.
I feel like this album is a little bit more accessible as well. It has a. I'm not gonna. I hate using the expression easy listening because there's nothing easy listening about Rivers of Nile, but
Right.
this album it's a little bit softer on your ears. It goes in a lot better. Like it smooths its way into your head a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, I again, first of all, I appreciate you saying that, all of that. But yeah, I think we talked about, going into this album. I just discussed being considerate of the way things are going to sound live and whatnot, but also the being concise arrangement wise. I think the work was purposefully a very overindulgent album. It was very at times very dense, very meandering, and that was on purpose. I think Brody, especially over COVID and being locked in his house, very much wanted to experiment with that, and I think there's a lot of merit to that. I love when bands do that personally, but I think that the 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 modus operandi with this album was concise arrangements, songs with very little fat on them, hooks, stuff like that. And I said this in interviews before, but it's very true. We took a lot of influence and vibe from the fifth album by a little band known as Metallica, and the Black Album for them was their attempt at very concise arrangements. The songwriting was very tight, very compact, no fat. And if you compare that to the album before, And Justice for All, which was crazy meandering music, which I love And Justice for All. But there's a big difference, and I think we took a lot of influence with that and to self-title the album.
There you go. You just didn't put the cover all black, but I think that's been done to death these days. So
Yeah. We had joked about just taking the cover of the Black Album and making that the cover, but I don't think that would have gone over too well.
Nah, nah, nah. Those guys are not big fans of that kind of stuff. They would take you guys down in a second.
I
Uh,
think our legal team could take theirs.
I was actually joking about this stuff with a friend of mine the other day, and I said, "Man, instead of suing Napster, if Metallica had bought Napster, imagine
Dang.
how different the streaming platforms would be today." I
Yeah, I
think
mean, maybe they could have changed it to make it more artist centric or something. I don't know.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Instead
sure.
of trying to stop the change, why not be part of the change and lead the change? They really missed
Actually,
on that one, you
it's
know?
it's funny that you bring that up. The interview that I did immediately prior to this one, the gentleman brought up, you know, AI and things that are changing in the music industry, and I just kind of I said like something to the effect of, I don't really, if I focus on all the things that I wish were like they used to be, then I'm going to be a very unhappy individual, and I don't want to do that. So, I kind of, yeah, you're right. Like, how do we adapt to the change as opposed to fight something that's already here, let alone something that's coming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's just inevitable. You just gotta. It's better to be, the one that is part of the change versus trying to fight the inevitable. I just find it doesn't really work. It's
It's a
just
recipe for being unhappy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just all around is a recipe for disaster. And going back to the riffs, we don't have a lot of time left. So going back to the riffs, what's your favorite riff from this album that you're dying to play on this upcoming tour that you guys are going to be doing across North America?
Oh man, there's a lot of cool riffs on the album. Let me think. I think so. It's a double-edged sword for me because a lot of the stuff that I look forward to playing is going to be super challenging to play because I'm going to be singing all over it too. And every album does that to me. I'm like, shit, I got to figure out how to do this now. Um, I do look forward to Despair Church, playing that live, but I don't look forward to singing it and playing it. So, I know it's going to be cool, but I got to figure out how to do it. Um, I think, I think the title track, Rivers of Nile, is going to be really, really cool in a live situation. Um, Logical End. There's quite a few. Evidence. I'm looking forward to playing a lot of the stuff, to be honest.
Well, you guys are headlining, so you better pack the set list with a bunch of stuff from the new record because everybody
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There'll
gonna
be
want to
there'll be
see that. Yeah,
you
and we'll
will.
I'll see you in Toronto on the last day of the tour. You guys saving the best for last, let me tell you. And
Ha.
I want to
Toronto is always a good show.
always like
Yeah.
Toronto loves Rivers of Nile. Let me just tell you that. Like every
I'm
time the
from
band
Toronto.
played in Toronto, the place is always packed for the
Yeah.
band. And I've always had it.
Dude, it's just a good music scene up there. It always has been. Every time I've played Toronto in my life, it's been great.
Like I've seen you here even with other bands, and I don't think you guys ever had a bad crowd either. So I think
No,
there's always a
no.
really good crowd and people really come out to support and they buy a
Yeah,
lot of merch.
they do. I love that.
Yeah, they buy a lot of merch, a lot of
They
merch.
do.
I want to finish our conversation because you mentioned the vocals. I thought the vocals on this record were excellent. I love the balance and combination that you guys created between the harsh vocals and the clean vocals. The clean vocals on this record add a layer of atmosphere that the sound can just not provide, in my opinion, especially when you have a different kind of more driven sound at times versus when you
Right.
compare with the work. How was the vocal recording for you guys? Because to me, it's going to be one of the things that a lot of people are going to pass over it because they're going to concentrate on the sound. But I thought
Right.
the vocal performance throughout, the mixture of cleans and harshes was so good.
Yeah. It was the recording experience was very smooth, but it was very different for me. And you had mentioned my previous band, Black Crown Initiate.
I
I
didn't know
would.
if I could say the name, so I was like,
Oh yeah, it's no problem. Uh, in the past, like I was the guy writing the lyrics and the vocals. So I would go into the studio and everything would be done. It would just be a matter of recording it. I knew in my head where everything was going and all that. And it's not been the same with Rivers. We go in the studio and then we figure that out. The lyrics are done by the time we hit the studio, but the vocals are definitely a bit more of experimentation. I got a whiny boy over here. You're
I
all
can
right,
hear
buddy.
you a little
Yeah.
baby.
He wants to go potty, which he will soon. But the in the studio, it's very much like, okay, we have the lyrics. let's figure out what type of vocal should go where, and who should sing it, and you know what the melody should be. And between me, Jared Biggs, and Grant, our producer, and Grant's a guy, he's done every album I've ever been on. And Carson, the two guys, I've recorded every album I've ever done in their studios. Yeah, so it was very much, instead of going into the studio like, here's how everything goes, just do it. It's let's figure it out now. But it yielded a great result.
I agree.
So I had to adjust to that mode of doing it, but now that it's done, it's fine. It's a perfect way of doing things.
So since I have another interview right after this one, and I'm sure you probably have another one too, let's
Yes.
continue our conversation when you come to Toronto, because guess what? It's the last day of the tour. So it's not like you in a rush to go anywhere
Nope.
afterwards besides going home
Nope.
to
Yep.
your family, to your
I think I'll be hitting the airport the next morning or something. So
Okay,
we can.
so I'll talk to the people in charge, the PR people in charge that put this good chat together, and
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I'll have them set up something for us in person.
That's fine. I'd love to do that.
Because we never done one in person, so I think we're
Yeah.
due. We're due to sit down
I'll
and
have I'll have some time between. Yeah, figure it out. Just
I'll
get that
figure out with
arranged.
them and they'll figure out the schedule and let's do this. Let's have some fun together talking about beards and haircuts and how the tour has been, because by then you'll have an idea if the tour is successful or not. I'm sure it will be.
I look forward to that, bro.
All right, let's do that, man. All
Yeah.
the best. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Cool. Keep in touch.
All right.